Okay, in this video we're looking at multiplying decimals, so let's get into it. We'll go through a couple of my turn, your turns, and then you can try some questions yourself at the end. The first one, we've got 1.3 times 5. I'm actually going to write the 1.3 and all of my decimals without the decimal point to begin with. I'm going to write it as 13, and you'll see why at the end. And we're timesing this through by 5, okay? And it is important when you write the 5 here, you've got to write it. You don't write it here, that's wrong. You've got to write it over here, because now 13, right, this is now the ones column, this is the tens column. Okay, so 5 is a ones, it's not a 10, so you've got to make sure your columns, they line up. Okay, that's really, really important. And we are timesing. So we're doing 5 times 3, which is 15. You're going to carry the 1, you got a 1 and a 5, so 15. And when you do this, show things really clearly, right? The 1, you're carrying it, make it small, so you know what's going on. You've then got a 5, you're timesing it by 1, which is 5, and you've got to add the 1, which gives you a 6. Now, of course, 1.3 times 5 is not 65. Okay, maybe you recognise that it's going to be 6.5 sounds reasonable. But the way that you can get this is you can say, well, after your decimal point, you've got one number after that. So when you go back into this, you've got to go from the end and you go back in by 1. And the reason is, okay, is because, well, when you wrote 1.3 as 13, really, you times that number, you times it up by 10. So when you get your answer of 65, okay, well that's 10 times too big. So you've got to go and do the opposite timesing by 10, which is to divide by 10, 6.5. Okay, if you don't really quite understand that, just know that you just count your numbers after your decimal points and you go back in, and that's going to be it. But that's kind of the reasoning behind it. Okay, but the first one, 6.5, that is your answer. The second one, you've got 0.2. 0.2 times 0.3, and again, just write your numbers without the point. So 0.2 and 0.3. Okay, there we go. Of course, you don't need to write the zeros in here, but I'm going to just because I'm going to. Now, we've got 3 times 2, which gives you a 6, and you've got 3 times 0, which is going to be 0. Now, when you've got a number with 2 columns in it, you need to go in and add a 0 on your second row. So we've done 3 times 2, and we've done 3 times 0. Now you're going to do 0 times 2, which is 0, and 0 times 0, which is going to give you a 0. And then you go and add up your numbers. So 6 add 0 gives you 6, 0 add 0 gives you 0, 0 add nothing gives you also a 0. Now here, you can see you've got one number after your decimal points, and you've got another number after your decimal points. Okay, so you've got to go back in. You've got 2 numbers in total. You've got to go back in by 1, 2 to give you 0.06 as your answer. And again, the reason is because when you've written this as 0.2 and 0.3, really you've times your numbers by 10 and times it by 10 to give you this. So you've got to go in and divide it by 10 and divide by 10 again to give you 0.06. Okay, but that is your answer for that one. Okay, so you can now try those 2 your turns up there. You can pause the video and you can give those 2 a go. So the first one, you've got 2.7 times 3. Again, just write it as 27, and we're timesing it by 3. Okay, again, without your decimal point going in there. So you've got 3 times 7, which is going to give you a 20, and then 1. Writing things really clearly. You've then got 3 times 2, which is 6. Add the 2, which is going to give you 8. So you've got 81. But of course, 2.7 times 3 can't be 81. Okay, it's going to be, you've got one number after your point, so you go back in by 1 to give you 8.1. Again, the reasoning, you times 2.7 really by 10 to get it to become 2.7. So then when you get your final answer, you've got to go and divide it by 10 to get back to what you did. So you're going back in by 1. Okay, so 8.1, that is your answer for this one, which is good. There we go. You've then got 0.6 times 0.4. Again, it's going to write it without the point, so 0, 6, and then 0, and then 4, and then we go and times away. So 4 times 6 is 24. We're going to carry that 2, making it really neat. 4 times 0 is 0. Add the 2 is going to be 2. You then go and add a 0 below because we're looking at your next number. So 0 times 6 is going to give you 0. 0 times 0 gives you a 0. And then we go and add our numbers together. 4 add nothing is going to give you 4. 2 add nothing gives you 2. 0 add nothing is going to give you a 0. And then again, you've got one number after your point, and you've got a second number after your point, so you've got to go back in by 1, 2 to give you 0.24, and that is simply going to be your answer for that one. Good. Okay, let's go through some more my turns up here. So the first one, we've got 2.6 times 0.5. Again, write your numbers without the point. So 26, and then you've got a 0, 5, so 0, and then a 5. And we'll deal with the point at the end, and we're timesing. So 5 times 6 is going to give you a 3, and then a 0. We're carrying that 3. 5 times 2 is 10. Add the 3 gives you 13. So 13, there we go, like so. Because you're going to go times by another number, you're going to go and add another 0 below, and you're going to go and do 0 times 6, which is 0. 0 times 2, which is going to give you 0, and then you go and add up your numbers here. So 0 add 0 is 0, 3 add nothing is going to be 3, 1 add nothing is going to give you 1. Now you've got one number, you've got two numbers after your point, so you've got to go back in by 1, 2 to give you 1.3, which makes sense because you're timesing a number by 0.5 by a half basically, so a half of 2.6 is 1.3. And you could write that also as just 1.3. Okay, they mean the same thing. This is a better way of writing it because you don't need to write that 0 on the end. It doesn't need to be there. Okay, good. Next one, we've got 2.15, so we're going to write it as 215. And you've got 3.6, which I'm going to go and write as 36. Now, because you've written these as whole numbers, you've got to make sure your numbers line up properly. So we know that this is the ones column, this is the tens column, and this is the hundreds column. Okay, so the 3 and the 6 definitely cannot go there because that 3 is not a 300, it's a 30. It's got to be 30 and then 6. You've got to make sure your numbers line up properly. And then we just go through and times away. So 6 times 5 is going to give you a 30, big 0. 6 times 1 is 6, add a 3 is going to give you a 9. So we've done 6 times 5 is 30, 6 times 1, which was 6 add a 3, 9. 6 times 2 is going to give you a 12, so it's going to be a 1 and then a 2. Okay, and because that's the end of your multiplication, you don't go and carry the 1, you put it up here. So there we go. You then got another number to times by, so you're going to go and put a 0 below, and you go and do 3 times 5, which is 15. Again, as you go through this, make sure things line up properly. Otherwise, if you're writing your 5 over here, it gets really confusing to which column you are looking at. Okay, so 3 times 5 is 15. We've got 3 times 1 is 3. Add the 1, which is going to give you a 4. And 3 times 2 is going to give you a 6. And then we go and add our away. So you've got 0 add 0, which is 0. 9 add 5, which is 14. So we're going to carry a 1, put a 4 there. 2 add 4 is 6. Add the 1 is 7. 1 and 6 is going to give you 7. Now, where does your point go? Well, this time you've got 1, 2, 3 numbers after the point. So you've got to go back in by 1, 2, 3 to give you 7.70. And that is your answer. So 7.740, which is the same thing as 7.74. Okay. 7.74. I'm going to check on my calculator to make sure I've made no mistakes when I'm doing this. There shouldn't be. It looks pretty good to me. 7.74 is good. So there we go. Perfect. That is your answer. Okay, you can try those two up there, and then you can pause the video, and then you can fast forward to see the answers. So the first one, again, write it as 52, and we're timesing it by 0.8, so 0 and then 8. Okay, and this time we're timesing again. So 8 times 2 is 16. There we go. 8 times 5 is 40. Add the 1 is going to give you a 40 and then a 1. You've got to go and add a 0 because we're looking at another number now. 0 times 2 is 0. 0 times 5 is going to give you 0. We're adding these numbers together now. So 6 add 0 is 6. 1 and 0 is 1. 4 and 0 is just 4. So there we go. 4, 1, 6. But of course, you've got to add in your points. So you've got 1 numbers. You've got 2 numbers after your decimal points. You've got to go back in by 1, 2 to give you 4.16, which makes sense because you're timesing it by a number smaller than 1. So your number's going to get smaller. So that looks pretty good to me. There we go. Okay, last but not least, we've got 1.89, so 1.89, and we're, sorry, what am I doing? Write it without the point, so 189, and we're timesing by 2.4, so I'm going to write it as 24, again making sure you've got your ones, you've got your tens, and your hundreds column, your numbers are lined up properly, that's really important. And then we go through, we're timesing, 4 times 9 is going to give you 36, so 3, and then a big 6, 4 times 8 is going to give you 32, add 3, it's going to give you 35, so 3 and then 5. 4 times 1 is 4, add the 3 is going to give you a 7, so 7 goes in there. And then we go and add a 0, because we're going to times 3 now by 2. 2 times 9 is 18, so 1 and then 8. You've got 2 times 8, which is 16, add the 1, can give you 17. Okay, and 2 times 1 is 2, add the 1, which is going to give you a 3. And then we go and add our numbers together. 6 add 0 gives you 6. 5 add 8 is going to give you 13. 7 and 7 is 14. Add the 1, it's going to give you 15. And then you've got nothing, add 3, which is 3. Add the 1, which is going to give you 4. And you've got 1, 2, 3 numbers after your point. So you've got to go back in by 1, 2, 3 to give you 4.536. And that should be your answer. There we go. Let's double check that, make sure I've made no mistakes. 1.9 times by 2.4 indeed gives you 4.536. Perfect. Good. Okay, you can now go and try these questions yourself. You can pause the video and you can fast forward to the end to check your answers. Okay, question 1, 6 times 6.8. I'm going to write this, the 6.8 I'm going to write it as 68, and then the 6 I'm going to write it as 6. Now I've written it like this instead of this because conventionally we write the long one first and then the smaller one below it. Okay, it just makes things a little bit easier. And we're timesing through. So you've got 8 times 6 first of all, which gives you 48. 6 times 8 gives you 48. You've then got 6 times 6, which is 36. Add the 4, which gives you 40. So 408. But of course, you've got one number after your points. You've got to go back in by 1 to give you 40.8. And that seems pretty reasonable to me. So let's go and put in our point a bit more neatly. There we go. So 40. Sorry, I'm doing that really badly. 40.8. There we go. Good. There's your answer. Up here, we've got 0.45 to 0.2, so 0.4, and then we've got 0.2. And we're timesing, so there we go. 2 times 4 is going to give you 8. 2 times 0 is just simply going to be 0. You go and add in a 0 because you're going to times through by 0 now. 0 times 4 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0. Add it all together, you get 8, you get 0, you get 0. And of course, you've got 1, 2 numbers after your points. You're going back in by 1, 2 to give you 0.08 being your answer. There we go. Okay, good. 5.9 by 0.4. Again, you're going to write it as 59, timesing it by 0.4. And then we go and times away. So 4 times 9 gives you 36. 4 times 5 is 20. Add the 3 gives you 23. We go and add in the 0 because we're timesing by another number. 0 times 9 is going to be 0. 0 by 5 gives you 0. Add them all up now. So 6 is 0. 6. 3 is 0. 3. 2 add 0 is going to give you 2. And you've got 1, you've got 2 numbers after your points, you're going back in by 1, 2. So 2.36, that is your answer for this one. There we go. Good. Perfect. Last one, you've got 4.9 times 19.9. I'm going to write this as 199, timesing it by 49. Again, making sure you've got your 1s, you've got your 10s, and you've got your 100s column lined up. We're timesing away. So 9 times 9 is going to give you 81, so you're going to carry that 8 and a big 1. 9 times 9 again is 81. Add the 8 is going to give you 89. So you've got 8 and then you've got a 9. You've got 9 times 1 now, which is 9. Add the 8, which is going to give you 17. So 17. There we go. That's your first one done. You're going to go and add in a 0 because you've got times by another number. So 4 times 9 gives you 36. So 3 and then 6. 4 times 9 again gives you 36, add the 3, which is going to give you 39, so 3, and then a 9, and then 4 times 1 is 4, add the 3, it's going to give you a nice 7. I'm going to go and add these numbers together now, okay? I'm going to go and add these numbers. So let's put that there, make it a little bit neater. 1 add 0 is 1, 9 add 6 gives you 15, you've got 7 add 9 is going to give you 16, add 1 is going to give you 17, and then you've got 1 add 7, which is 8, add the 1, which is going to give you 9, and you've got 2 numbers after your point, so you're going to go back in by 1, 2 to give you 97.51, and that should be your answer. Let's give that a check. 4.9 times 19.9, 97.51 looks pretty good to me. So there we go. There is your last answer. Okay, thank you for watching. Hopefully that was useful. Of course, you can rewind to correct anything that you need to. Thank you.